Hello everybody, my name is Flamingo Writer, and we're back again for another Magical Girl podcast video. You know, sometimes I have to wonder if I'm too nice for this genre, especially for how I critique. Because every time I do talk about this genre, it seems like whenever I find a Magical Girl show that catches my interest, I'll always say something nice about it, and whatever comes to mind, I'll always say that, oh, I like this part of it, and critique something that could have been improved on if it's anything necessary. And don't even get me started on how people view everyone's favorite genre, if nothing else. I personally like to think that you can still enjoy a genre and still have its own gripes with it every now and then, especially because there are some people out there who will do anything just to say, oh, you're only defending this here series or movie because it has your favorite genre. No, not really. I mean, like I said, you can still like something that you really do enjoy and still have a few critiques here and there. I'm just saying, there's probably a reason why so many people always have to bitch to other people, all because, oh, you like this genre because, oh, it's only because of this and so on. And I don't want to say that's really the case. You don't have to agree with the genre in itself if you don't want to, but if anything, if it's not your cup of tea, try not to take that away from people. Just say why you don't care for it and have a good day after that. Or that's what I would say if it wasn't for the fact how many people love to be toxic around people. Seriously, what the hell? And sometimes, if anything, whenever I do have something that I do enjoy, especially if it's something that could have been better made, I feel like it's really some case where sometimes even the Magical Girl shows I've talked about never seem to have gone a huge audience out there. We're not talking about something like Sailor Moon or something that gets a cult following like Princess Tutu. No, I'm talking about a series that I'm pretty sure that none of you have probably heard of until I bring it up, because I have to give props to the Hero of Tomorrow when I bring up this series. That series being Tenko and the Guardians of the Magic. I made it no secret that I really do a lot of my channel to the Hero of Tomorrow for him having me make this podcast to begin with, because if it wasn't for him for getting this Patreon request of anything from a few years ago, I probably wouldn't have talked about it sooner. But yeah, this is how I was introduced to Tenko and the Guardians of the Magic. Released from 1995 to 96, Tenko and the Guardians of the Magic is another Magical Girl show, except it's made in the West thanks to Saban Entertainment, but it's also a celebrity tune. What's a celebrity tune, you might be asking? Well, it's in the name. Basically, take any kind of celebrity that was popular during its time period and put them into a cartoon. While I admit that I haven't seen a lot of these, I've only seen very few of them in particular. Those being Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi, Class of 3000, and probably my favorite I watched a lot during my childhood, Jackie Chan Adventure. There was also Bobby's World too, but I'm not so sure if you count him as a celebrity tune because he played to both Bobby, the titular character, and as well as the dad in the series, with Canadian actor slash comedian slash judge Howie Mandel. Oh, Howie, I remember how I used to watch you a lot as a kid. But as for Tenko and the Guardians of the Magic, however, yeah, apparently there haven't been many people who've talked about it aside from the Hero of Tomorrow, and probably myself if anything. But after that, you don't really hear many people talk about it, and there's a reason for that. Because most of the series is almost... While the first 6 episodes were released on DVD, they only put 2 of episodes on there only in the UK. Unfortunately, they only had the first 6 episodes released, but not the other 7. Oh, I think they came out way ahead of its time. Seriously, I'm still gonna call them just numbers. Fight me. Anyways, yeah, apparently this is enough to say that apparently you're not going to find too many DVD releases outside of Amazon and as well as the UK, if anything. But the series did run on Jetix, which is a network that I remember watching a lot of, such as shows like Chaotic, Yin Yang Yo, and pretty much anything else. But we're not here to talk about Jetix, unfortunately. No, we're here to talk about Tenko and the Guardians of the Magic, which is a good move on my part because personally, I do like the idea behind it, especially because the person who is part of the celebrity tune is Tenko, the magician herself. And this isn't the only time I've talked about a magical girl with a magician involved. Remember Saint Tail? Although admittedly they did come out during the 90s, so I wouldn't blame you if you knew more about Saint Tail more than Tenko, if anything. But it's kind of sad when you realize that, yeah, I'm gonna go over the differences when we get into this here video, but for right now, let's get into Tenko and the Guardians of the Magic and see why it didn't last as long. So you're probably wondering, who is this celebrity this time in this celebrity tune? Well, in this case it's Tenko, a real-life magician who for the most part, I can't really say that much of it beyond the fact that originally she was they said that she was going to die of some kind of mysterious illness at the age of 18, but after getting some kind of treatment, if anything to judge by, she surpassed through that age and still working today as a magician. So this seems like an idea for a celebrity tune, if anything, especially because a magician with elements to help stop out bad guys in a magical girl setting sounds really tailor-made for something like this. But if you want to find out more about Princess Tenko, about her magic tricks, I will say that you can look them up online, but honestly, when you get right down to it, she seems to be doing quite fine for all things considered. But what's the cartoon about, you might be asking? The series itself focuses around our main character, Tenko, a female magician who helps out around the magic so she can help out by using the Tenko box to do some performing tricks. However, in a flashback, because it should totally be fitting to put the flashback in the pilot episode, which I honestly think could have at least done some introduction to it, but that's just me. Anyways, Ida here is really Tenko's master, who happens to help her out about learning how to do magic over the time and becomes his assistant as the time continues. However, instead of just giving the assistance to his two Jana and Jason, although to be fair, they do get bitterly jealous as time goes on because they really want to become their grandfather's assistant since they actually inherit the magic. But instead of giving it to them, he decides to give it to Tenko, considering that she's very loyal and helped him get out of the fire incident that happened in a flashback, which I'm not so sure how that worked, but okay, I guess I can take whatever I can. And Jana and Jason get so jealous to the point where they'll do anything to get their hands on Tenko because they want the magic for themselves. Well, Jana does more than Jason, but still. Fed up with this, Jana decides to just go ahead and try to stop their grandfather from taking this over anyways, but she's stopped by her younger twin brother, Jason, in order to not do so already. But Jana, being Jana, because she is a total antagonistic bitch in this year's series, starts to throw the Starfire gems, yeah, I'll get back to that in a second, and throw them into the Tenko box. No, I'm not kidding, that's really what they named the box, the Tenko box, because I'm pretty sure a magician can be psychic, although I'm not so sure if that's true or not. I'm sorry, I'm not a magician myself, so I can't really confirm that, but I can say that, yeah, apparently Jana was so goddamn bitter about this that she decides to throw the Starfire gems into the box, and only for this to happen. This actually shows that she's not really gonna let go of that grudge. Well, we can't have it fantastic somehow. And as you can imagine, our only way to do so is for Hideka here to at least tell Tenko to go ahead and do just that by retrieving the Starfire gems and doing so before the twins take over. Now, I will say for a series like this, it does seem like it's something that I would be intrigued in. Because honestly, looking at a premise like this, a magician and having to retrieve gemstones, especially because they need to do so before conquering the world. Now, conquering the world is nothing new, but having a magician and retrieving gemstones sounds like something that's a little different than what the other magician magical girl show I've talked about, Saint Tail, did. I said this in the Phantom Thief Sheen video, but yeah, the other series actually had them retrieve a lot of other belongings to someone, and the only time I saw them do a gemstone was probably in the first episode, if my memory serves correctly. But in this case, having gemstones in something like that for a magician to retrieve back, maybe I'm a little impartial because I'm really someone who really does love gemstones, if nothing else. So yeah, I do like this idea. I really think they really come forward with this. And Tenko's not the only one who has to retrieve the gemstone. We also have some of her new founding friends, Bold, Steel, and Hawk, all help her out if anything. So at least she's not totally by herself if anything. And that's something I am grateful for because if she was doing this by herself, I think the team would come in a circle as they go along. Though that does brings up the question what would happen if they did continue it, if anything, further, but that's beside the point. I will say that her friends are actually pretty likable in their own way, despite having them questionable elements here and there, but still. One thing that did gripe me, and this is just a minor gripe for all things considered, is that I don't like how they wrote Hawk, the Native American, if anything. Now, don't say I'm being racist or xenophobic or anything, no. It's just that when they give each of these characters their own gemstone in order to go ahead and transform with each other, for some reason, and I don't know if it's just me thinking too much on gemstones because I'm focusing on gemology for my writing, if anything, but it just seems like you're doing a little too much on saying that because Hawk is Native American, you have to at least make him so racial stereotypical, right to giving him into giving a turquoise. Like, I get that you want to keep it as cultural as possible, and I don't know. Maybe it's just me, and like I said, this is a minor complaint, but you can at least try some other gemstone. And if anything, you don't always have to rely on turquoise, if anything. Hell, some Native Americans use other gemstones as well. Or maybe I'm just saying that because I'm tired of people saying that turquoise is the only gemstone Native Americans needs, even though sometimes I feel like that's kind of dumb in hindsight, considering that my mom used to collect a lot of turquoise jewelry since that is her birthstone. But I'm just saying you could at least done more than just that. But as I alluded to, that's just a minor complaint. I'm not really saying that's really the show's fault or anything. I'm just saying that's really what I think. But yeah, I do like the idea of these here gemstones because think about it. I'm a sucker for gemstones, and having every gemstone have their own power if necessary does sound like a good idea, if anything. I mean, maybe it's just me thinking this, but having gemstones being retrieved for the human to get back, if anything, especially because they're the ones that get to their own magician powers of anything just so they can do magic tricks and all that, does sound like a good idea on paper. Hell, I actually don't mind some of these powers, if anything. Like, say, for instance, how Jana and Jason do it. Yeah, while they are antagonistic, if anything, I do like what they do with the gemstone, if anything. Like, they mostly get to the amber gemstone, and when they combine their power together, they turn into a two-headed dragon. That's pretty badass, and even if they are something else or anything, mostly on Jana, because, like I said, she's more antagonistic than her twin brother, Jason, is. I really do like the idea that having a gemstone by combining both the people at once just to turn into a two-headed dragon sounds pretty cool, if nothing else. Or sometimes they'll burst out flames. Yeah, some of these gemstones can do more than one quality, but still, it's actually pretty cool when you think about it. But you're probably wondering, do other characters come up in this team? Well, there are two others. Well, I say two, but it's more like, say, one and a half, if anything. But, well, let's go over each of the two girls, if anything. The second girl of the team, if anything, would have to be Allie. But if you're going to watch this series like I have, which I'll get to where you can watch it if you want to, would have to be the fact that she doesn't come in until episode 2. Yeah, she really had a bickering argument with her own father, if anything, because after her mother died, she really feels like she can't do anything. Teenagers, am I right? But that being said, however, I don't want to fault her too much of anything, because after she received an opal gem, which brings things back to life, or in this case, not back to life, more like she didn't mean to bring things to life, like, say, a TV, if anything. Yeah, the series itself is strange how they use their gemstones, but let's be real here. Aren't a lot of powers strange? Yeah, I thought so. Anyways, one thing I will say is that she does become a very helpful person, if anything, but knowing how teenagers can be at times, I'm just going to come out and say it, it's kind of sad when they do use her as the main focus of anything. She's usually really short-tempered of anything. I get that she's going through a lot and she is a teenager and anything, but still, at least they actually do whatever they can to make her relatable, if anything. But I will say for Her Allie, I kind of don't mind her if anything. Yeah, she can be a bit one-dimensional for her issues of anything, if you really think that's all there is to her character. I certainly thought so when watching this for myself, but she does turn out to be more compassionate than you may think, if anything. Hell, in the 12th episode where she gets focused, we do get some implication that she was just going to give up and not become the guardian that she wants to be. And when I say 12th episode, I did mean that. Yeah, she does become a guardian, but only in almost the second to last episode. Jeez, I knew the series itself didn't really run on very long, but personally, and this is just how I would write it, I would personally think that you could at least try to give her more training and say, I don't know, maybe the 5th or 6th episode, and then maybe become a guardian at that time too, but that never came about to be. Maybe if the show had lasted a little longer or something like that, maybe, but I'll get to my thoughts on that at the final end of this year. The other female character here is Shanti, and I gotta say, having a character that's a zookeeper, having a monkey around, while Tenko has this snow jaguar or snow leopard. Yeah, I can never tell the difference between a jaguar, leopard, and ocelot, but you can tell me if you want to in the comments, which is highly doubtful because I'll get to that as well at the end, if anything. But I feel like, if anything, Shanti does seem pretty likable in her own way. Despite running as a zoo, if anything, to judge by, I really do like her character. She's not just the African American tribe, even though, yeah, I get that they're doing what they can with her, if anything, but she doesn't really become a prominent character in the main cast, if anything. She does help out, don't get me wrong, but it just feels kind of wasted when you realize that, yeah, apparently they only have her do whatever they can with her only for the plot to bandits, and it's kind of sad when you realize that despite being the other female character that could be part of the group, she doesn't really get that many episodes. Much to my account, however, I feel kind of sad because otherwise she is pretty likable in her own way, if anything possible. But speaking of likable, I think the real reason why some people seem to underestimate the series, and I'm not trying to fault the hero of tomorrow, if anything, I'm not trying to say that this is his fault for not giving the characters a chance, but part of me does feel like these characters could use a little work. Yeah, while I won't say that the characters are unlikable, I'm not gonna say that the characters are just wasted. It just feels like they are, at least to me, is that they come off as not stuck, they just feel like there's so much you could have developed them even further. Like, say, how they did with the male characters. I do like what part of them do, but I think the only one I actually will say, aside from Hawk, however, Steel himself doesn't seem like a bad character by any chance. Like, aside from using the Garnet Gemstone, oh, I'm sorry, Starfire Gemstone. Seriously, why can't you just call him Gems Stone to anything? Or is the name copyrighted or anything? Yeah, I don't know. And I think that's really the thing, however. I do like Steel because he actually proves himself to be kind of like the brains of the group. I actually like that idea. Like, come on, have more male characters be brains in events in a while. Maybe it's just me because I want to see more smart characters in male characters form, because I'm sick and tired of people saying, oh, the male character has to be dumb or stupid. Like, seriously, guys, you can do more than just those tropes. I'm just saying there's a reason why there's called improve on your skills, but I will fault the series too hard because this did take place at a different time, so what do I know? But as for Bolt, the blonde-haired guy, however, I can't say that much about him. He's not anyone stupid or anything, he's just, well, I guess you could say he's short-tempered and sometimes gets stubborn like Allie does, but honestly, there isn't much I can say about him beyond he's just doing whatever he can to help out, if anything. And he did give the idea about giving Ninjara, that pet animal, if anything, to Tenko to cheer her up. So at least he actually does care for her, if anything, to judge by. But that said, however, I'm not going to say too much on that because let's be reasonable here. The real reason is because we have to have male characters showing what's strong enough anyways. And while Tenko does stand up for herself, can we talk about her for a sec? Now, I'm not going to say that Tenko herself is necessarily bad or anything, but part of me feels like she's a little bit of a Mary Sue. I mean, think about it. She does magic tricks, a lot of people seem to like her aside from the villains, and she also seems to instantly get to whatever she can to stop the bad guys, of anything to judge by, even though near the last bit of the episode, the final episode of the series, it seems like they were doing whatever they could out of it. I don't want to say she's an exact Mary Sue. She does have a very few flaws, but it's hard to tell at times if you want to catch my drift anything. But her only flaw I can think of is that at least there are some characters who didn't seem to like her, like say aside from the villains, one of them, however, has to do with the fact that one those tries to stop Tenko and really can't stand her magic. So at least they had some characters that, while they're not in any word focusing on Jana and Jason as much, they do whatever they can. Anyways, do. But yeah, Tenko's not a bad character, just not as developed as I thought she would be, though I do respect that, if anything. But speaking of Tenko, however, I should point out that at the end of every episode, you're going to see a magic trick that Tenko premieres in live action. Much similar to Jackie Chan Adventures, you're going to see her do some kind of trick, if anything. And some of them you can do at home. Though if there's some that you can't do at home, she'll usually remind you and say, do not try this at home, and say the magic is with anything. Now, I've got to say, even if I haven't seen a lot of magic shows during my day because I've only seen very few in number as a kid, I really would have loved this, if anything. But considering I'm not a 90s kid, what do I know? I'm late to the party is what I'm saying. But I will say I don't mind this segment at all. And while they do put, like, say, one or two tricks, depending on how long the trick lasts for, I do really respect that. Tenko sounds like she's having the time of her life, even having a few kids being volunteers of anything. Not all of the tricks have kids in it, just few in number. So if you ever do watch this for yourself, I'll let you know that in mind. So with all of what I said so far hasn't been enough for you, you might be asking yourself, is there anything to add about this Magical Girl podcast episode that I could add to about what makes me feel like the show itself never got a recommendation for a lot of people? Yeah, there's probably a reason for that. Remember when I said it got brought up in the 90s? Yeah, I know that some people are going to say Magical Girl shows have existed in the 90s, sure, and I talked about them in my podcast, but the problem is that I personally, and this is just my personal take on it, I think it has to do with the time period. Now, I'm fully aware some people are going to say to me that maybe they didn't know this show existed, or maybe it was some kind of fever dream. Both wouldn't surprise me either way. But the sad thing is, like I said, this came out during the mid to late 90s. During that time period, there weren't that many story-driven shows. And while the series itself does have a somewhat episodic feel to it, it just really sucks that when something like this really it seems like something targeted towards little girls, it doesn't feel like they really attracted audience. Saban really wanted to hype this show up, and given the fact that Tenko herself wasn't really popular anywhere near the West like she is in Japan, or at least she was for a bit, it really does feel like they're contrived to think that anyways. I'm not gonna say that the series itself is high art or anything, but like I said, I do really enjoy Tenko the Gardens of the Magic, even if it's not as iconic as some a Magical Girl show like Sailor Moon did and the like. Yeah, this show was made in Japan. Maybe they would have found an audience, but I wouldn't know because I'm not from Japan, nor do I know what it's like any time anyways. And hey, Tenko doesn't seem to mind it as much as far as I'm concerned. For what I've been researching on her recently, she seems to be doing pretty well for now. But do you know what's the sad thing about all of this? The sad thing is that this is kind of true about anything you start realizing about nowadays. More than ever before, whenever you want an attracted audience, some people just think that it's best to at least think of something else, or at least go into something like drama, for instance. But I don't want to say that Japan drama is something that really keeps us from doing so, but it seems like that's kind of what sad of itself, however. But you're probably asking yourself the big question, why don't people remember Tenko the Gardens of the Magic, or whatever happened to the show? Why didn't it take off as they wanted to? And the answer is pretty simple: low ratings. And I shit you not, the reason for it is pretty sad. It's really because, and get this, it's because it failed to capture an audience, if anything. And I'm not kidding, this is devastating when you think about it. How much do you want to bet that someone who wants to put their hard work and effort into something that they feel ambitious for, and yet out of pure spite, your stuff doesn't get fully realized? I gotta say, this does hurt me, and I think I really have to say, only for myself only, I don't speak for everyone when I say this, but for myself, I can see where they're coming from. It's just never really took off as Saban really wanted to, like their other products. And while I really wasn't there when it happened, I can definitely see why. Sometimes it really does suck when something's so ambitious that you put your heart and soul into it, and yet for some reason they never really took off as it seemed it would have. I'm not going to say that this was the pure passion project or anything, but due to the nature of it, especially because they wanted to sell toys and stuff like that, especially because they want to do something for a magician. And if anything, that's gotta suck when you realize that not a lot of people are going to buy your property, if anything. But hey, unlike the last Western Magical Girl show I talked about, at least it wasn't the excuse of toys or a lawsuit. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the only way you can find ways to watch this show is if you go through YouTube. And unfortunately, you're gonna find 6 in high quality, while the rest of them are basically TV recordings or VHS recordings, if it's anything to believe by. But like I said, it seemed like it aired on Jetix for a time. But while I did grow up with a bit of Jetix growing up during the summertime, man, I feel old because I'm gonna say, hey, that it's almost been 20 years ago that I've watched this network a lot. Like say, Super Robot Team Monkey Hyperforce Go. My god, that's a long title. I don't know if I said it right. But then I watched other shows like Chaotic, Legend of the Dragon, Yin Yang Yo, and plenty of others. But I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if I remember watching Tenko and the Guardians of the Magic because, like I said, it didn't do very well anyways. Even if it did last on Jetix, I really highly doubt that it would have lasted long on there either because anyone who did watch Jetix are probably Gen and Z or Gen Alpha kids like myself anyways. And don't even get me started on how much a lot of people say, oh, you only watch this because so and so. Guys, I may not have watched a lot of TV a lot growing up, but Jetix was my shit growing up. Even watching Chaotic when I had the chance, which was either around the weekends or high school at the time. Not high school, what the fuck am I talking about? But yeah, I'm getting old, I can't remember. Oh my god. But with all that said, however, yeah, I do feel bad for this show not getting as much as attention as it is. And the sad thing is, you can't really comment on any of these episodes I was telling you about, all 13 of them, because they had them, get this, choices of family. So you can't really comment on them either. But by the end of the day, that's kind of really sad what things consider. Maybe if the show did well, like say what I said about Allie being a guardian, maybe they would have done that. Or say maybe Shanti would have become a guardian if anything, if it's anything to believe by. Believe me, it looked like they had a lot of ideas for it, but since it never took off with an audience, that's kind of adding to the sadness into its eggshell. It just never really cracked itself to find an audience or its home anyways. While the series itself may not be entirely lost, you're gonna have to do what I did and, like I said, watch it on YouTube. You just can't comment on it because of the choices for family. Because as we all know, this platform is made for family in mind, am I right? Blow me out of the flamingo pond. And you know, as much as I have to say right here and now, you might be asking yourself, why am I so down all of a sudden? Well, if you haven't noticed, I don't really have that much to say about these Magical Girl shows for the summer anyway. If you haven't noticed already, not a lot of people have been watching my podcast enough as it is anyway. And when you get right down to it, I feel like I was almost kind of burnt out when you get right down to it. I don't want to stop this podcast anytime soon. Even if, yes, I only talked about only say 6 of them if you include this one. The only ones I've talked about so far during my summertime would have to be Magic Users Club, Fatty Ron Maru, Magical Angel Sweet Mint, Trolls, Dream Hunter Rem, and this one being Tenko and the Guardians of the Magic. What I'm saying is that throughout this entire summer, I didn't really talk a lot of Magical Girl shows due to the fact about how much my schedule was every now and then. And that's gotta suck eggs when you think. So for the people who do watch my podcast every now and then, I'm just gonna have to take a break if anything. Because, oh boy. Next time, I'm not going to talk about a Magical Girl show, but I want to talk about an obscure shoujo that just never really seemed to have a wider audience than I think it could have. But until then, I really don't know when I'll be back in September. But until then, I really need to take a break. I'm probably gonna mope for a while because I feel bad that this is what it seems like. A lot of the shows I've been covering never seem to have taken off as much as I thought they would have. But that's what happens when you have an audience that's very small in size. Anyone out there, like say my friends Guillotine and Maddie, would know what I'm talking about. But I really don't want to mope too much of anything. But that's really all there is to it. But until then, I thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time, and whenever I come back, I'll show you what kind of obscure shoujo I'm talking about. Just so you know, it revolves around something that you might not be familiar with until then. But, yeah, whenever I come back, I hope that my moping stops, but I highly doubt that it will be. But until then, I thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay fantastic. I'll see you all around.